Today's meeting is about Zen of Now and exploring some of the Zen readings, a little bit of tradition, a little bit of history, and ultimately it is not about tradition or history, it is about the awakening of the present moment, awakening of your consciousness, awakening of your true self. And in that moment, there is a clarity of awareness, a clarity of consciousness, and this clarity is called Zen. And of course, this clarity is now and it is here. So this Zen can only be now, can only be here, can only be this. And the mind has many 10,000 aspects, and they're all interwound, intermingled, interlocked, interconnected, very complicated. However, there's a great simplicity in awareness itself. It is so simple that it pierces the mind. It pierces through conditioning, the veils, and it starts with simple noticing. It starts with simple noticing in every single moment what is happening now. With complete honesty, with complete transparency, with complete nakedness, with simple noticing, moment by moment by moment, what is happening now. Today I would like to read a little bit about the beginnings of Zen. The early encounters, we may say. The teachings of Zen Buddhism can be summarized in a few words as a special transmission outside of scriptures. No reliance upon words or letters. Direct pointing to the mind. Seeing into one's own nature. And the realization of Buddhahood awakening. A special transmission outside the scriptures means that it's always fresh. If you're reading something, it was written some time ago, obviously. There is a causality to it, how this book ended up in your hands. And only in that moment, if something clicks, that is a realization. No reliance upon words and letters is to not stick particular ideas in your head. It's to not stick anything particular in your head. And if there is something sticky particularly in your head, then obviously you have to get it unstuck. Direct pointing to the mind. Yes, it is directly saying that this is the mind. This is the limitation. to directly acknowledge that that's the mind, that's the limitation, that's the fixture, that's a position, that's a condition, and then seeing into one's own true nature, realization of awakening. It's a beautiful summary, and don't fix on it. Just allow it to be heard, hearing, and letting it go. Sometimes this path, the spiritual path, the path of awakening can be said, there's a saying in Zen, it's like a mosquito trying to bite an iron bull. It's when the mind tries to fix onto the truth. It's like a mosquito trying to bite on the iron bull. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't stick. When the Indian monk, and as we know, Zen comes really from India, from Buddha, from awakening of Buddha. And Zen is a branch. So it comes from India and it traveled to China and then Vietnam and reached Japan and other Asian countries. But the origins are of awakening of Buddha. So when the Indian monk, Bodhidharma, the first ancestor of Zen Buddhism, brought his realization of the Buddha's teachings to China in the 6th century CE, there followed a legendary encounter with Chinese Emperor Wu. So having heard that a monk of great wisdom had arrived in his country, Emperor Wu, who was a devout Buddhist, commanded his audience of this monk. And he tells the monk, I have built many monasteries and erected temples to honor the Dharma. The emperor greeted his guest. Is there not great merit in this? The emperor says. And the ragged monk replies, no merit whatsoever. Is that so? Replies the emperor, who was no doubt a bit confused and flustered at having received such a bold response from a monk. So what then is the meaning of the holy truth? And the monk replies, vast emptiness. Nothing holy. Well, then who are you? Demanded the emperor. Who stands before me here? And the monk replies, I do not know. And he walked away and spent the next 9 years in a cave, meditating, facing a wall. And thus began the school of Buddhism known as Zen, or Chan as known in China. And the tradition of these Zen stories, which are mind-to-mind encounters of the great matter of the Dharma. So these encounters have been passing away for the last 1,500 years, and many stories have been accumulated and known of encounters with these awakened beings and direct meetings in which the truth is revealed. So therefore, in this little story, which is the introductory story, it is a great example that no matter how big the deeds are, even if the emperor has built many monasteries and temples and so forth to feel the pride and so forth, and the monks simply reprise, there is no merit to this. Because it is not about pride and it's not about what one thinks, but it is about awakening of the truth. And he called it the vast emptiness. He said, there's nothing holy. So sometimes we think that something is holy or something is divine. You know, we might have a little sculpture of Buddha or you know, in Christianity they have Jesus and so forth, or there is a temple and this and that. And that represents a symbol. However, even a simple rock on a road is as holy as another stone and carved into someone's face. In the universe, everything is holy in the absolute sense. It is all awakened truth. In a relative sense, when we use the mind, then yes, we distinguish what is special, what is less special and so forth. And of course, if one clings to the idea of specialness, then it is no longer actually special. Then it is the idea of the specialness. So thus in Zen and in awakening, it is always about the truth in the now. And many times people come to me and many times people meet me and they assume that I'm the same like a month ago. And that is not true. They say, oh, last month you said like this. And the river is no longer the same. Because in reality, there is no fixed position. You cannot take a word and keep it for the truth for a month. That word was true in that moment, in that circumstance, in that unique situation. And this is the challenge that we have, that people read books and watch the videos and so forth. And the truth is that moment of recognition of the truth. And when that moment passes, what remains is memory. So therefore, people usually meet me in memory. They rarely meet me in the now. And in the now, it's always new. It's different, obviously. And you know what I'm talking about, because when you go and visit your parents, you are their child. You're always the same. You're always the child to the mother. Your father will always make a little comment about you in this way or that way. And the mother will tell you, you're always so slim, you should eat more. And how are you like this and like that? So they're always meeting you in a particular way. And all of you have this, a little bit of resistance, because you feel that's not who I am. So that is the moment of recognition of truth. Because you're not only a child, you're a grown up now. You're adult now. You're independent now. So you're not only the child. So therefore, a recognition is always fresh, it's always present, it's always now. And there's nothing wrong to be a child of a mother, but a mother should realize that you are an adult too, and you are a being, or even you are awakened being. And I remember some years ago, 5 or 7 years ago, my mother I was asking my mother, so how are you, and how do you feel about me? And my mother says, well, you know, me and your father, we feel a bit confused because we don't know how to speak to you. and I replied, don't worry, I'm still your child. So therefore, a meeting should always be present. And in my case, it was reverse, because I wanted to feel them comfortable, and I wanted to say, I'm still your child, and I still love you, and it's all as it was. So they already can recognize that there's something very, very different. But in most cases, you know, the parents would see you in the old way, and your old friends would see you in the old way. You know, your schoolmates and college friends would always see you in that particular way. What is a realization? These are the Dharma words from one of the Zen teachers called Senzaki. I have been asked to explain what realization is, but if it could be explained, it would be not realization. While you're kneading the dough of your thoughts, you cannot enjoy the bread of realization. Walking through the forest of thoughts, just keep on walking until you find yourself cornered in a place that admits neither of advance nor retreat. When the mind admits neither advance nor retreat, here your knowledge will be of no necessity, no avail. Even your religion will be unable to rescue you when the mind is cornered. If you're really eager to enter realization, just go straight ahead, holding tenaciously to the question, what is realization? March on bravely. Use your own sword. Carve out a way for yourself. Many people are following the pathways of others. You need to carve your way for yourself. There will come a time when all of a sudden you will lose hold of your sword, and at that moment, behold, you will have gained your true self. There's a wonderful description of what realization is. You have a double-edged sword. It's called your awareness. And you have to cut through the forest. You have to keep cutting through it until the path is clearer and clearer. And as you're cutting your path through this forest, you will look at this double-edged sword and you will realize that awareness itself is realization. It is always present, it is always here, and it always cuts on both ends of duality. There is another beautiful little story called Carve Me a Buddha. So before a person called Soke came to America, when he was just beginning to study his Zen, his teacher arranged a meeting for him with Soyen Shaku. The master, having heard he was a woodcarver, asked, "How long have you been studying art?" 6 years, the woodcarver replies. The monk says, so can you carve me a Buddha, please? The woodcarver returned, so he was working on this project, carving a Buddha. And then when the monk returned a couple of weeks later, the woodcarver gave him a statue, a beautiful statue of Buddha. And the monk says, "What's this?" And he threw it out of the window into a pond. It seemed very unkind to the woodcarver, and he asked for explanation. "Can you please explain why you did so? Because I've been working on this wood carving for a long time. It's a very special one and beautiful one." And the monk replied, "I ask you to carve a Buddha in yourself." So that is a beautiful analogy, a beautiful story of the awakened way, we can say, of the awakened way. Many times people come to me and they say, well, there's no way around with you. And I say, of course there isn't. And sometimes they say, well, I'm one of your best students, but it's never really perfect. You know, there's always something more. And yes, I reply that it is about non-camping. It is not about how perfect you have learned what I said, how perfectly you have practiced what I told you. It is always about this moment. It is always about this moment. I'm not asking anyone to become the best students, to become the most eager followers. That is not my purpose. My purpose is to help you awaken. And therefore, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's tough. And that is part of awakening process. There's toughness when it's needed. There's love when it's needed. But it's always for the best of your awakening. It is always for the best of your awakening. So there's a story of the early students of Zen in the West, in America. So Zen really came first to America in 1950s, and it was a difficult road. It was a difficult road in 1950s because it was right after the Second World War. And first the Buddhism and Zen arrived to USA, and then it came into Europe. So in 1950s, there is quite a famous American Zen teacher called Philip Kapleau. if I'm reading his surname correctly. So he has a little story of how he started. So he starts like this: what makes a man in his middle years give up a secure job, comfortable income, family, and friends for the austere and rigor of Zen monastery and the uncertain life of a homeless one? Because in the old days, Zen was a monastic practice. So you would have to give up your lay life, your job, your family, and everything else, and come and live in a monastery if you want to be a committed student. And he further writes, it was painful tensions, exhausting restlessness, painfully felt inner bondage, or the need to understand the sufferings. And that he, in his own words, referred to the damn nothing feeling, that nothing would satisfy him, and his mind felt like a huge bondage. So he couldn't basically live a normal life, and he had to find a way out, and Zen was his choice. So he said, I gave up my work in 1950s, disposed of my belongings, and set a jail for Japan, because there was no Zen in the West. So where do you go? To Japan. Determined not to return until I became enlightened. Well, that is called determination. Yes, that is called determination. For the next 13 years, Philip Kapleau struggled with physical pain, language barriers, fatigue of his own mind. And in that day in Japan, English, they wouldn't speak English. So you go and meet the Zen teacher, and what? He's speaking in Japanese. So you have to figure your own way to learn the language, to start to understand. And of course, it's so much easier when it is spoken in native language, in English. So to go off to Japan and to start learning a new language, that is very, very difficult. So that was one of the first renowned students who went to Japan to start acquainting with Zen. The experience, he wrote, left him feeling free as a fish swimming in an ocean of cool, clear water after being stuck in a tank of glue. That is wonderful. And then he says, what was his first lesson of Zen? After traveling around Japan for some time, looking without success for a Zen teacher who might be willing to work with the Western students. Because, they would say, well, Westerner, they had certain ideas about Westerners. So it took him quite a while to find a teacher who was willing to accept him as a Western student. So he and his traveling companion, Professor Bernard Phillips, received a letter from one of the monasteries saying they could stay there for a short time. Excited at the prospect of finally meeting a teacher with whom they could communicate in English, the two Americans spent the 6.5-hour train ride going towards the monastery. On their arrival that evening, the Zen monk greeted them and asked if they were tired from their long trip and they needed to rest. And they said, yes, we're a little bit tired, but we have prepared a number of questions on the subject of Zen that we And he said, stop, stop, stop. After you do Zazen, which is a sitting Zen practice, you can ask whatever you want, he says. The monk replies, first do the sitting practice, then I will answer your questions. Meanwhile, I have some business to attend to, the monk says, so he went off. So ignoring the protests of the Americans who have never been instructed of how to meditate, they had no clue how to meditate, and they didn't even know how to sit correctly, they're cross-legged. The monk said to them, do it any way you want, just sit on the floor and remain silent. The first instruction. And with that, he left off. So the Americans were sitting wordlessly for 2 miserable hours in the dark hall. Concentration was impossible because their thoughts were chasing each other like a pack of monkeys. Excruciating pain in legs, back, and neck. At least the monk has prepared them a simple meal afterwards, some rice. And then he said, well, now, what would you like to know about Zen? The American replied, not a thing, because they were exhausted and could scarcely remember any questions that they ever had. They were just too exhausted, too tired after 6 hours train, sitting for 2 hours in a cross-legged way with all the pains. So the monk says, okay, well, you'd better go to sleep because we get up at 3:30 in the morning, and pleasant dreams. So the American replied, he thought to himself, that was the worst sitting I ever had in my life. Looking back on the experience of the first meeting with the Zen teacher. One look at me and he had me pegged, meaning that was my first lesson in Zen. So essentially, the real thing here is not to torture them. It's not to make them feel uncomfortable. But the real thing is the real lesson behind this is to quiet the mind. Because they arrived with a million questions about Zen and they were so excited. And finally we met a teacher, somebody who can teach us. And he said, wait a moment, you need to exhaust your mind first, and then we can talk. So Zen is not easy. And there are many, many encounters and stories of various difficulties and challenges that one undergoes. However, there's one little story that I would like to share, and then we will go to the practical side. Yes, that's the one. So this story is called The Two Pots. And this story relates to something a bit more beautiful and we can say a way of Zen, which is kind of when the mind doesn't understand what's happening. So every day an old woman walked a mile to the river to get some water. She carried a stick across her shoulders with the ceramic pot tied on each end. So she had a stick on the shoulders, 2 pots tied up, walking a mile every day. One of the pots had a small crack and leaked the water each time a woman walked home. The cracked pot felt very bad about this. It's a little like we can say an easier story. So this little cracked pot saw that the other pot did not have a crack and didn't leak the water the way he did. The old woman was a kind person and the cracked pot felt sorry that that when she comes back all the time, one of them is half empty. One day, this pot spoke to the woman about this. So he says, "Kind woman, for so many years you have carried me on your shoulders to get water, yet I have not been able to serve you well. I sincerely regret that I have a crack and leak so much water. Please forgive me." And the old woman smiled at the cracked pot and answered, "Those many years I have benefited from your small flaw, my dear pot. Didn't you notice that on one side of the road many more flowers grown? This is because you watered them every single time we walked home together. I always had fresh flowers on my kitchen table and even sold some at the market. Don't you see, it's precisely your flaw that is your greatest gift to me." So this is a beautiful, just a little beautiful story. So we always need to come out of the mind. And if something is happening in a particular way that your mind cannot understand, there is a deeper reason behind. There is a bigger picture always. So bit by bit, as you awaken, you start to notice these hidden reasons. You start to read and understand between the lines. You start to see your life circumstances as lessons, we may say. You start to see your pains and worries, that there is a lesson behind them, that there is something to look deeper, that there is something to uncover. And even if your mind cannot understand, it doesn't mean that something is wrong in this way or that way. Maybe there is a precise reason why one is like this. And there is a big variety of people with, some people are more intellectual, other people are more feeling-based. And everybody has unique gifts and abilities and skills. And essentially, if you're tall or short or white or black or male or female or this way or that way, and whatever way you are, whatever uniqueness you have, it is exactly as it's supposed to be, and it is exactly you who you are. And if you simply stop, looking for what's wrong, there's nothing wrong. So that's a little message as well on the side. So essentially, it is a recognition of the immediacy and freshness of the now. The immediacy and freshness of the now. And this immediacy is inviting you, the Zen of Now, the immediacy of now, is inviting you to step out of the river. And many of you will notice that there is a certain flow. That flow is energy. That flow is mind. That flow is understanding. That flow is called life, or I call it the river of life. And awakening is like stepping out of the river. It's like saying, "Oh my God, I'm wet. I should come on the shore." You suddenly awaken. You realize that you're wet. Maybe you've been swimming along the river, and sometimes you were swimming opposite direction, opposite the river, struggling. That's called struggling. Life wants you to go there, but you're struggling upstream. But whether you're struggling or you're just flowing along, you need to step out of the river. And that is the immediate now. And if your mind is looking, what is immediate? What is immediate now? Oh, you know, this room, this, you know, this and this. No. Don't look for objects. Don't look for what is around you. You know, what's your environment? What's your experience? It's not searching. The immediacy would be that your mind would be searching. What is immediate? No searching. The immediacy of now is recognizing even the mind is searching. Stop that too. Or for some people who say, oh, yeah, I'm following this. That's called understanding. Stop understanding. And some people say, I'm not getting it. Yeah, stop confusion. Exactly, stop that in which you're engaged with. And that is the immediacy of now. And there is aliveness in this immediacy. There's a big aliveness. It is so alive that it is so hard to sustain, because I'd rather drop back in the river and flow along. That's what the mind says. It's a bit easier to flow as the river. It's a bit easier to, let me just chill out and rest and, see where life takes me, see where my mind takes me today or tomorrow, and so forth. It's going to take you in circles and circles and circles and circles, like little whirlpools in the river, when some currents meet, there are these whirlpools. The little rock, there's a whirlpool. So you're going to be hitting these rocks and swirling around. So therefore, my invitation is to come to the immediacy and freshness of now. And now let's do a practice together. And this practice will be a practice of noticing. A practice of noticing. We will be not so much sitting in a regular, sitting meditation in these Zen meetings. We will be exploring certain practices that help you to grow your awareness and help you to recognize that which is present here and how to sharpen that awareness, how to see more clearly. So this practice, it's called the practice of noticing. And as a first step, you can slow down a bit. Slowing down helps to bring the mind to the center. To become more centered, to have a bit more control over the mind. So slowing down is step number 1, to become centered, less scattered. If you need, you can follow your breath, because breath will also help you to center and to concentrate your mind from the scatteredness, from the flow, into what I call the vertical line, the vertical dimension. The mind is more like a horizontal flow, like a river, and the present is the vertical. And in this practice, I invite you to very gently notice your experience. To very gently keep noticing your experience. And to always come back to the center. If your mind wanders off, if you get engaged into energy, if you zoom into a space, come out. This is more of a Zen practice where you come out of the flow. Whether it's your mind, whether it's focusing particularly on your body, whether it's focusing on enjoying the energy flow, or camping in a peaceful space. So the invitation is to come out and very gently again to notice your experience, what is exactly here, what is exactly now. Even if you can't define, and I'm not asking to define what is your experience, there's no need to define it, there's no need to label it. Simply to notice what it is. I'm not asking you to know your experience, just to notice it. There's no need to understand even. Simply noticing. This very simple noticing is very, very special. It develops your awareness. It grows the strength of your consciousness. So the simple noticing is like a seed of awareness. And as you water it, and as you allow the sunshine to shine upon it, by practicing this simple noticing, the seed is slowly growing. And one day it will be a mighty tree. You can call it the tree of awareness. If you feel it's getting a bit too intense, you're burning out, then you can relax, let go. Follow your thoughts for a bit. Allow the energies to flow through for a bit. It's a very dynamic practice. This simple, gentle noticing is a very dynamic practice. You don't have to be fixated. You shouldn't hold noticing. No, don't do that. If you're holding it and And becoming more stiff, that's not the way. No. Let it go, relax. I'm not asking you to become a rock or to freeze like an iceberg. So you see that this simple noticing is very soft. It's a very easy practice, but it has its own challenges. And it's very important that you really, really understand the importance of this practice, because it is growing your awareness, cultivating the seed of consciousness. So day by day, time after time, you can do it in a meditative way. Once you become better at it, you can even do it anytime, anywhere. You're standing in a queue, you can keep noticing what's happening. You are driving a car, well, you need a certain focus to drive. You can still see what's going on, but of course, ideally focus on driving. But as you learn it more and more, you will be able to cultivate it real time, every moment. And at some point, your mind will get exhausted, and that's okay. It's called starving the mind, or starving the ego. But if you are on the other side, if you are freezing and becoming very stiff and very tensed up, then it's time to relax. It's time to let go. It's time to just do whatever you need to do to take it easy. And when you feel that now you're ready again to practice this simple noticing, then you can continue. The simple noticing is not an observation practice. It's not really detaching yourself from, from whatever is going on and just becoming the observer. No, no, no. You are still here and your body is still breathing and your emotions are still here, and just simply noticing whatever is here. It's the practice of awareness. It's not a detached observation. These simple practices can be very challenging. And the mind may say, oh my gosh, I can't do this. I'm just going to go crazy. And then you say, oh, I noticed that my mind wants to go crazy. That's a new revelation. Or you say, oh, I feel bored. Oh, that's another new revelation. Boredom creeps in. in your awareness, in your experience, something comes in. So you see your mind changes. Your mind changes. That is the point, that your mind changes. And you cannot freeze yourself to notice. You have to be alive and fresh. Now these we can see are the goals, the objectives, which are not to freeze, not to fall asleep, not to get bored, but these are changing states of the mind. If that happens, it happens, it's okay. But the goal is to be fresh. Freshly noticing, softly noticing. You don't have to be like a laser, like focused. No, it's not about developing your focus. It's not about concentration. It's a simple, soft noticing. Whatever your mind, your emotions, energies, body are doing, and even whatever your attention and focus is doing. Simple, soft notice. Okay, and for those who are ready, you can slowly start coming back. And of course, you're welcome to stay longer in your practice. So there is a saying that the truth is alive. The truth is always alive. If you already know something, that's already old. That's called knowledge. It's not called the truth. So whatever you realize today is the truth, but whatever happened yesterday, that's a memory. That's a knowledge and memory. Hmm? So therefore, your intellect, your smartness, your knowledge, your knowingness, that's not the point. It's not how many books you read and how many years you practiced and this and that. No, it's about the freshness, aliveness, immediacy in the now. It's about how immediate you are in the now. Well, that's perhaps the intensity of the now. But you can also be very relaxed and still be awake. So the intensity and relaxation are qualities of focus. I use the word immediacy for a reference of better understanding. Another synonym is called alertness. But alertness is simply freshness. It's not it means fresh, alert, awake, aware. It doesn't imply anything with danger or be afraid or anything like that. No, that's totally something else. So alertness means awakeness, immediacy, freshness. Many call it isness. That's what isness is. It is also known as the middle path, and this is quite a big subject. The middle way, the middle path. So it's neither being stiff or rigid, nor being too relaxed and bored or sleepy. So the simple noticing is very awake, fresh. All right, so now we will dedicate some time for questions and answers. And in these meetings of Zen of Now, I'd like to invite all of you to be open to inquire and to be open to engage in a dialogue of inquiry, of inquiry into this experience, into this immediacy, into this noticing. So we will always dedicate about 20 minutes or so for any questions and dialogues. And this is your time. So you don't need to go to Japan. You don't need to sit on a 6-hour train and wait until we wake up at 3:30 a.m. in the morning so that you can ask all your questions. So use the opportunity now. Yes. Leon?
Hi, Mindo.
Hello.
Yeah, Greg, Leon, whatever. How are you?
Essentially, it is you.
Yes. I just put on hold, Leon, because there's the craziness going on, just paperwork and stuff. I'm going to wait when it just get easier. I want to say hello, Mindo. Hello to Leon, and hello to everyone. I'm so glad to be here again and have a meditation with you. Very nice talk. Wonderful talk, Mindo, as usual. You are really master of your craft. Especially that part about love, there was a little bit of, it's just the frequencies. I love to talk about love because it's even magnifying these feelings and so nice. And also, good to know these things, good to know. I ain't got questions, but I have so much happiness to express and gratefulness to be here and say thank you again for your all service, Mindo. This is so nice and so good, so awesome, amazing what you're doing, and thank you so much, and love and peace.
Much love to you, Greg, too, and much gratitude as well. It's shared and multiplied. And this love and gratitude is shared and multiplied.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. Hello.
I actually don't have so much of a question for you today because the practice went really well. I was having a really difficult day today, and I came with a bit of almost like desperation, and ultimate surrender to the meditation, kind of like, please give me something I can use today, almost, and I did exactly as you said, like to become aware, to notice. And I said, I remember I just went, okay, I'm here, I'm breathing, and I'm having these thoughts. And a little switch went, you're living a false sense of identity. Because I recognize this, every day is changing. The body is not tied with your thoughts, but so happens that your mind is in your body.
Yes, exactly.
And it just feeling this ripple effect of all this like tension that is stuck and stemming from this I, this false sense of me. And it was
Yes,
quite a
and this is called the fixture, the identity, the mind, the I. It's a certain fixture, and the fixation is basically like a dam in the river. It's blocking the flow of life. So therefore it becomes very exhausting. The mind becomes very exhausting because the river is blocked, because the freshness of life is blocked. So yeah, and it's exactly that moment in which you came to see that, yeah, the mind is just a fixture. It's a certain
yes, like I was living by the memory as opposed to the present, remembering everything in my past and using that to guide my experience.
Yeah, there's a lot of reliance on the memory. Yes.
I know this from psychology and how we use our old defense mechanisms to live on in the world, and now I'm really seeing it in practice, bringing it about, into my everyday. It's been a long 8 years, Mindo.
It has been, but it seems it's been comfortable.
It's been worth it. It's been worth it. And it's been fun.
Yes. So you see, in this new age of information, we are meeting online from your absolute comfort zones. Right? It couldn't be easier. It couldn't be easier. Yeah. So this is the beauty of today, the beauty of technology, the easiness of access, the availability, and it's reading these books and texts, just reminds me of the old days, and the difficulties of how even do you get to Japan, in 1950s? Did he buy a plane ticket or he took a boat? The boat takes a couple of weeks, to sail across the ocean. So
yeah.
Yes.
For sure. I mean, I would love to know the name of this book or where you got this information from.
I know that many will ask, but I will tell you that I will tell everyone. Yes, the book is anonymous until we finish with it. And when we finish with it, then I will tell you the title, so that afterwards you can read extra bits, so that you don't get too smart in advance. That's the reason why.
Yes, hi. So I noticed that when you invited to open, my whole system responded in fear, And yes, I just noticed the gap and that kind of disability to actually open in the ways I would like to. And this is here.
Yes, that is okay too.
And I just feel sorry for myself right now. This is here too.
Yeah, and another important aspect is don't push yourself. Yeah, don't push yourself. Yeah, don't push yourself. And when something occurs overwhelming, like this opening that happened right now, when something occurs overwhelming, it's important to take it easy, because everyone can handle a certain amount of this vastness, a certain amount of this openness, and sometimes there is more familiarity with with your own energy system, with your own usual feeling of yourself, and in this inquiry the importance is not to get overwhelmed. The importance is to recognize that this openness can be also quite unfamiliar, perhaps, and it can open something much deeper that is maybe beyond the comfort zone, and that is okay, and that is fine, and the best thing when that happens is to love yourself, and to take it easy, and to soothe the overwhelmingness, and then to recognize that there is simply something more, and there are things which are deeper, and there are ways that you can connect to these deeper places in a soft way. Sorry. Yeah, so there are ways also, that you can connect with. It's all about familiarity, really, and only when we stumble upon something unfamiliar and something much larger than we can handle, then it becomes a bit scary. But otherwise, it's really about familiarizing. So yeah, as you can do a little practice just to notice that this big vast openness is actually, it can be your home. It can be your home, and it's a little bit like humanity. We are so comfortable under this blue sky. we really got used to it. It's every day it's a beautiful blue sky. Every night it feels cozy, and we can see some twinkling stars. But rarely anybody realizes how vast the universe is. Rarely everybody knows that it's big. Everybody knows that the universe is big, but rarely anybody realizes how big it is and feel it, actually. So it's the same way, like from a little home, recognizing there is a bigger home, and it's nothing to be scared about. it's about gently familiarizing. So what is beyond the blue sky, and what you know, how bigger it is, and actually it's a bigger home. So that's a way of familiarizing. Yeah, so bit by bit. Martina, are you still there? You had your hand, huh?
Yeah, I am.
Hmm.
Hello, dear Mindo. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I just wanted to share that I'm always very much touched by your words, but I came in 10 minutes late, and your words tonight brought a new kind of, it's like a wave of new Zen energy that was really almost blasting my third eye. And at some point I really had to kick myself out, otherwise I would have burned like in the midst of something. It was really wow. And yeah, seemed as if this new wave of energy from the Aquarian time combined with your Zen meditation could be a very new key to all of us. And I wanted to thank you very much for this. Yeah, it's really a newness to my cells sweeping over here. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed, and this you know, this newness, or you know, this Zen of Now, it was coming to me you know, bit by bit. And those who are closer, you know, that we would be you know, during the retreats or travels, we would meet at the table and have these Zen conversations, you know, of now. So it's been here, you know, for years actually, and I felt that now it was the right time to start bringing it out, and to yeah, to open it up. And within myself there is a very strong energetic lineage. I know that yeah, in the past I was certainly practicing Zen, and I feel that it's in my bones, you know, you can say. So therefore it's also for me too, it's a new but old journey, you know. It's new because every moment is new, but it's an old journey because it was done in the past, and I know it, I feel it in the bones. And yes, and at the same time it's beautiful to bring this freshness. And I was very surprised actually, as I started to investigate and look into the current you know, Zen movement. And you know, for example, Alan Watts, quite famous author, you know, he was never official in Zen. He never had any teacher actually, and he never even did any formal practices as such. And yet, you know, he was quite famous in USA, and that was like in 60s and 70s. Yeah, I don't know when he passed away, but you know, probably somewhere around 2000s or so, if I'm, yeah, I don't know exact date. And as I'm looking more and more, you know, I'm seeing that Zen found a way into the West, and there is no more need, you know, to be monastic, and there is no more need to break your bones and your knees and your hips, you know, by sitting on a Zen cushion for hours and hours. And as always, it adapts, you know, to the people, to environment, and to the new age. And we're living in the age of information. Now we're opening to the new Aquarius age, to the quantum age, um, and it's well, really, you have to ask, what is the Zen about, really? And the origins come from awakening of Buddha, and it's simply a branch of awakening. And in this branch, you know, they really try to not be ritualistic and not be traditional in a sort of, you know, not to be sort of as a religion or as a to have as least as possible any traditionalisms and religious stuff and so forth, and that was the purpose and the origin of this Zen branch. And of course, in China, in Japan, it was kept, you know, as a lineage of teacher to student, and what is called through a transmission, and now yeah, within me, I as I said, I feel this lineage, this energy. Certainly, it's probably I was you know, so rigid in the past that I spent certainly, you know, maybe 20 years sitting on a cushion, you know, and getting this energy into my DNA, you know, fully. So it feels like that, although not in this life. You know, in this life, I didn't have any formal Zen practice or teacher. However, you know, it is here, and I would like to revive it in a new way, and nothing traditional, you know, so to speak. But it's all about awakening. It's all really about awakening, and that's what it really is about. And as I was looking at the current Zen teachers, they're very contemporary. If you will Google, you know, and then search for the current Zen teachers, they're very, very contemporary, and they talk about any subjects, really. You know, they even talk about Jesus and even write books about Jesus, and you know, I was surprised to see that, and discuss any possible subject, and try to bring lightness and humor and of course newness and freshness and new appeal to it, and to kind of remove what's not working anymore for Westerners and for this time, for this specific time in history. Yes, and so it's always changing, as you know, the same way as Buddhism, you know, was very traditional, but as it arrived to the West, they brought the tradition at first, you know, the Dalai Lama and so forth, and many other monks, and now Buddhism has found many ways of reaching people, and I remember I even attended quite a few Buddhist meetings in England and in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, I remember I was invited. One of the Buddhist teachers, he saw me, and he saw something special, and he invited me. He said, "You need to come to our special meeting where we kind of meet in a small group, you know, because not in a public space." So I was invited to this meeting, and yeah, and there were just like maybe 6-7 people, and we were sitting down, and he was saying, he was from Sri Lanka, a Buddhist teacher, and he was saying that you know, he had access to a very direct Buddha teachings that is absolutely not religious, and it's not taught or spoken about anywhere. And he was speaking about basically about atoms and molecules and how they create reality. And I just, yes, it totally makes sense. And it was amazing. I attended those meetings for a while, and then I just had to move to another place. So we need to recognize that you know, even if we speak about Buddhism or Zen or even Christianity to large extent, well, maybe for those who not live in Malta, but you could see that Christianity is also adopting to in many new ways, and I remember in London I attended a London gospel choir concert, and wow, it touched my heart so much. London gospel choir, you know, these women were singing like solo, you know, these so massively uplifting songs that it just made me cry. I was like, wow, it's amazing. That was like about maybe 12 years ago. And wow, and it really touched me deeply, and I realized, wow, if I had that when I was a kid, I would have loved Christianity, you know, because it was totally amazing. So it's really about finding a way, isn't it? It's about finding a way and to make it accessible. Yeah, to make it accessible. Okay, and we have a message from Shauda as well. Yeah, she said she just sometimes falls asleep, and it's okay, and of course it would be helpful, Shauda, if you're still here, to practice a bit of single pointed concentration, because when the mind falls asleep or when the mind gets bored, there is a lack of concentration, and therefore it would be very beneficial for you to practice what is called a single pointed concentration meditation. And if you want to send me a message, I can give you access to our guided meditation. Yeah, so just let me know, and that would be very, very beneficial. Because really your mind should be neither too focused nor too relaxed. Yes, your mind should be right in the middle, neither too stiff nor too loose. And that's where is the place of noticing. And that's where awareness can shine in. The awareness can shine in.